Imagine that we're researchers and we have a group of people we need to learn something about. One of the very first questions we need to address is how we're going to decide who will participate in our study. Turns out this is actually kind of complicated. Let's learn why. One critical distinction to make at the onset is the difference between a population and a sample. The population is the group about which we want information. This is the group we're trying to learn about. The sample is a set of individuals from that population that we hope represents that population. Representative sampling is the practice of trying to build a sample that reflects the broader population. Now, one might ask, why not just include all people within the population in the sample? This comes down to a question of how we define our populations. That is a question that each researcher must address for each individual study. Imagine I want to study students at a university. There may be thousands. Maybe I want to study the citizens of a nation. Now there may be millions. And if we wanted to study treatments for diseases, we could be talking about hundreds of millions to billions of people. Populations are usually just too large. Sampling from populations is far more practical. So then how do we go about doing this? The best way to go about this is through random selection. In this situation, you look at the entire population and pick just some of those people to make up your sample, and you should do this randomly. Random selection should help us to eliminate sources of bias. Notice that after I randomly select, I have the same ratio of orange people to blue people as I did at the population level. While random selection is the best way to sample from a population, it's rarely feasible. There are usually too many people to keep track of, and not all of them will want to participate in your study. Social scientists often use convenience sampling. This is basically just, we'll take who we can get. Convenience sampling is so widely used because it is so difficult to get new participants. But it should be noted that there are many other types of sampling methods. Usually, more thorough sampling methods require much greater effort and money to implement. One method which would improve upon convenience sampling is quota sampling. Let's show an example of how this might work. Remember, in our general population, we had 50% of the sample were orange people, and 50% of the sample were blue people. We want to build a sample of 10 individuals, 50% blue people, 50% orange people, just the same proportion that we had in the general population. On the day of our study, these are the first 6 people who walked through the door. Notice how unbalanced it is. Remember that we're trying to build a sample size of 10 with an equal number of blue and orange people. We already have 5 orange people in the sample. We don't need any more. When the next orange person walks through the door, we're going to turn them away. We already met our quota for orange people. This method will produce a representative sample, but we have also introduced some bias. What if, for instance, most orange people work evening shifts, and most blue people work morning shifts? Some of the orange people work morning shifts, just like most of the blue people. They came after work, just like the blue people did, and we turned them away, unlike the blue people. Our sampling method unintentionally biased the sample against morning shift orange people. This helps to demonstrate that various sampling methods have advantages and disadvantages. This one happened to introduce some unintentional bias. Researchers should be quite careful and thoughtful about how they select their samples, as well as how they report and/or minimize bias.